I highly recommend you use speaker view for this event. So you can see who is saying what. It'll make things a lot easier than gallery view with everyone participating. Feel free to ask any questions that you have in the chat, and I will be collecting them. And for our Q&A session at the end, we will answer as many as we can. And we're asking our BIPOC individuals to turn on your cameras if you want, and our white accomplices can wait for a few minutes before turning on your cameras. This just helps us keep this, when coming into the space, seeing a friendly BIPOC individual for a BIPOC-centered space just means a lot more than we can put into words.
If you turn your cameras off for a second, everyone turn your cameras off unless you're BIPOC and keep them on. For anyone who is BIPOC, you can turn your cameras on now. Turn them on, because we want to see your faces. We want to see the melanin. We want to see all of that.
Yes.
I see some more coming. I'll give you a couple minutes. Let's see. I see some more. All right. Anyone else that is BIPOC that wants to be a person of color who wants to turn their camera on? Okay, we're all good. And now for the white folks in the space, you can now turn your cameras on. So the reason why we do that is because in a lot of spaces, people of color are not centered. In a lot of spaces, we don't get to see ourselves when we first come into the room. And one of the things that we practice in somatic experience is like this skill called orienting, which means you come in and you look around, right, to see like, am I in a safe space? And a lot of time, even on Zoom, you come in and you're like, oh my gosh, there's a whole bunch of white faces. Am I, like, where are my people at? I want to see something, right? So that's something that we practice, and that's something we'll talk about later on. Go ahead, Aaliyah. Anything else?
Nope, we covered it.
All right, so let's start with some intros. I will start with myself. So I am Sabia. I am a full spectrum doula. I am a somatic experience practitioner in training. I am the owner of a nonprofit called For the Village. I'm also the owner of a doula training organization called Birthing Advocacy Doula Trainings. I'm a lot of things. There's a big, long list. I'm an anti-racism educator, but most importantly, I'm Black as hell, and I'm queer as hell, and I'm all these good things, and I'm happy to be here in a company of so many beautiful people. And I want to pass the mic to Melania. Hold on, I didn't put that you could unmute yourself. There you go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melania Brown. As many of you may know, my sister was Lady Polanco, and she passed away last year in the care of Rikers Island. And since then, a couple of days after her death, 3 days after her death, I did my first rally, and since then I haven't stopped. And I'm looking to forward to many more events, and you know, like I said before, I'm here to stay, and I'm here. I believe, you know, my sister gave me a purpose, and I'm not gonna let her name go in vain. And I want to be part of the change that this world desperately needs.
Thank you. So next could be Dr. Stephanie Mitchell. Please report.
Thank you, Sabia. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Dr. Stephanie Mitchell. Don't ever call me that. I only put that in the space because sometimes, and I'm just going to go on a quick thing, sometimes there are a lot of people that don't give a moment to give a Black woman any credence.
You're freezing over there in them Alabama streets. Let's see. Oh wait, okay, now we can hear you. Hold on. Okay, now we can hear you.
Okay, So I don't know where y'all left off at, but
You said that you only use your Dr. Stephanie Mitchell because people don't give Black people credit,
yeah.
basically.
So practice listening for people who feel that these weren't like, oh, here's a Black woman I should listen to, but no, maybe you should do that at baseline. And so that's why I do that. I'm a vlogger. I'm a mother of 4 children. I'm a wife. My area is healthcare. As I said, I'm a certified nurse midwife. So my area of focus is midwifery, but through the lens in which I deliver care is through a social justice lens. And anyone who's in birth work, as a quick side note, that should also indeed be your lens of focus, and it should be done in the anti-racist basis of birth work. So that's a quick plug. Thank you. So there we go. Look at that. We're like on the same thing. So it is the foundation. It is the foundation of birth work. You can find me sometimes on these internet streets under the moniker Dr. Midwife, where I like to disseminate information to all of the people who need to have this information. And I also can be found in the state of Alabama, currently shaking things up and trying to get as much people on board with normal physiologic processes done safely out of medical industrial complexes as possible. And Alabama is a wonderful place to start. Thank you so much for having me, Sabia.
Thank you. And now, David, introduce yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm not a doctor. It's a pretty amazing intro. No, but I'm the executive director, Freedom Project. And we support the healing and dismantling the stigma and the impacts of mass incarceration. We do anti-oppression, mass incarceration work in the community. We're here to dismantle systems. My personal story, I was thrown away as a child when I was 16. They gave me life in the penitentiary. Somebody gave me empathy, came in, gave me empathy. It was transformative for me, allowed me to give me space so I can heal from my trauma that put me in a position to make the decisions that put me in those circumstances. And I've grown into the man I am today. And Brian Stevenson, the great work that he did and the juvenile research helped pave the way for my release. And I'm able to do the work out here. I'm married, got a house out in Auburn, 3 beautiful kids. And I'm in the movement. We protest, we rally, we show up, we show out. This is what we do. So thank you for having me. I appreciate this space. I love to see all the melanin in the room too. So
thank you for being here. Crazy thing is, like, I started off as a doula working with incarcerated people. So that was like my first ever for 2 years. I never thought that I didn't even think I would be a doula for people that weren't incarcerated, because that was such a passion for me. And things just blew from there. But yes, for sure, I'm so glad that you're here. So what we want to do next, Aaliyah, is we want to have a moment of silence for your sister, Melania.
Yes, let's just hold space for...
Can you share that screen for me, please?
Yes. Yes. Now let's just take a moment of silence just to send up so much love to Melania's sister, Laylene, and all of our other incarcerated trans sisters and brothers. Thank you for holding space for that. Alrighty. let's move into the somatic movement.
Yes, let's get into some somatics really quickly. So I'm gonna give you a little intro to why we're here, a little bit more. One, I want to say that the speakers that have been chosen to be here is crazy because we all represent the Black experience in so many different ways, right? And like we're all still like moving towards like this bigger goal of liberation for Black people. And so I'm just like super moved by just like the way that we're all doing this in so many aspects and how we can come together today and talk about what we need to talk about. But before we start, I'm going to do a little somatic practice. So how many of you are familiar with somatic experience? Have you heard of somatic movement? Have you heard of any of that? You can put yes or no in the chat. Yes, no, yes, yes, no. Good mix, a good mix. I'm here for that. Minimal, no, for sure. Some of you know, some of you are in school with me too, or in my class, or for my dual training. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna welcome us to kind of take a couple minutes to just check in with ourselves before we actually start the conversation. The reason why we're doing this is because a lot of times we are all of us are guilty of this. We're walking around dissociated from our current experience. It's kind of like, what is the next thing? What happened over there? What do I have to do later? Like, what is the next, protest we need to be at, right? For all my folks that are here, what are the next like statements I need to make? All these different things. So I just want to invite you all right now to get comfortable wherever you are. If you feel comfortable and safe to, close your eyes. And the first thing I want you to do is just take the time to notice your breath. As you're noticing your breath, take some time to lower your shoulders down, unclench your jaw, as you're taking time to notice your breath, I want you to like zoom in a little bit more in your body and feel like, how does it feel when my breath like comes into my body from my nose all the way down into my chest? Do I feel my lungs expand? See what you notice. Then I want you to kind of get a little check-in with yourself about how you're feeling right now. Maybe you're feeling really excited. Maybe you're feeling a little anxious. Maybe you're even feeling sad. Whatever that feeling is, I just want you to take a minute to give it what it needs. So if it's feeling sad, maybe you need to give yourself some nurturing, some love, some compassion. If you're feeling excited, maybe you need to just hold on to that excitement, let yourself be happy. Take a few or a couple deep breaths. I want you to slowly start opening your eyes, but before you start looking at the screen, I want you to look over to your left And I just want you to look around the room, look up, look around, look behind you, look down to the ground. And then when you're ready, you can land your eyes back on the screen. Now, how are you feeling before we get into the shits? Hopefully more present, hopefully more here, hopefully more open. Because we know that these kind of conversations can make us feel a little riled up. So let's get started. So the way that we're going to do this, also I'll mention this to the panelists, the way that we're going to do this is that Aaliyah, well, if you want to say something, I think, what do you think is easier? Do you want to just like raise your hand, or do you want to like use a reaction? So then Aaliyah will call on you so we're not talking over each other. What's easier? Either one. Hand. Makes it feel like we're in school again. Hand, okay. Good, okay. So Aaliyah, back to you.
Alrighty, is everyone ready? Let's do this. Okay. In your own words, what is the Black Lives Matter movement about? And how did this movement come to your attention? Whoever wants to go first, let me know.
Let's see, am I gonna break the ice? I'll break the ice. So the Black Lives Matter movement, for me, it came to my attention, dang, how long ago was it? I mean, I've been doing activism work like for the last 5 years. So I can't really like say when it like that moment where it came into my mind. But I can say that when I started doing activism work and Black Lives Matter became the movement that it became, it fucking like exhilarated me. I was like, oh yeah, like people are seeing this shit. And especially as a doula, especially with, and Stephanie probably can speak to this too, especially with Black birthing people and Black infants dying more than anyone else for discrimination and racism, it was like, oh, someone's actually paying attention. Like someone's coming with a movement that's going to uplift all Black people. Because also I was working with people who are incarcerated, and that's a whole nother conversation. And I was like, wow, someone's coming with this movement that isn't, it's not isolating, or it's not supposed to be isolating, right? In a sense of Black trans lives matter, Black men, Black women, Black anything, young, poor, whatever the case is. Like, it was something that made this like general statement that I felt could uplift all of us. And so that just made me like, and because I'm Black, right? Like, it made me want to be about it.
Awesome. Who else wants to add their voice? Come on, doctor.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. Okay, so I just recall, right, and this is probably the time where a lot of people came to, where Black Lives Matter came to their attention, because it was, I think the actual trigger for Black Lives Matter was after Trayvon Martin was murdered. And it was, I think, at that time where social media or dissemination of information became, something changed in the way that we received information. And I remember that being like the first time ever hearing it, but it was on the back of his murder. And so, you know, at that time, I think it was more like, you know, very political. It was very, you know, politically driven and activist driven. But from that time, the more and more I began to hear about Black Lives Matter, it was always on the tail end of some violence, which caught my attention and caused me to say, wait a minute, this is something, yeah, Black Lives Matter. You know, this is something I need to look into, because it was always on the repercussions of death and hurt and harm that was done to Black bodies. Now I'm in birth work, okay? And that's exactly why it resonated so much with me. So I remember that's just kind of like my first foray. And I think like social media has really propelled Black Lives Matter in a good way, but then also, which I'm sure we'll touch on, in some not so great and performative ways as well. So.
Go ahead, David.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. This question is always funny for me because this movement's been around forever before they encapsulated it into a phrase called Black Lives Matter, right? And so I always want to put in the space about all the great people in community who have been doing this work for years before there was internet and before there was traction and before, so many great white people were wearing t-shirts that say it, right? And come to the rallies. But so I just want to really name that. And the fact of the matter was, I think through my life experience to the school to prison pipeline and through my experiences in the society, I've always been felt to believe that I don't matter, all right? I think that it was another level with Rodney King, which reminded me how much I don't matter. And every instance after that, Trayvon and Breonna and everybody else is a constant, consistent reminder of how much I don't matter or how much we don't in this society. As I'm able to heal, I understand my value aside from validation from this society. I've been able to show up better in this society and better in the world and better in the community. But yeah, I think that that's what this is really about. As far as this movement, to me, is really about our value and being able to, in our liberation and understanding that. How did this movement come to my attention? I think it's always been a movement. I think that, it's come to my attention because I get socked in the face with oppression every day and 1,000 of microaggressions that I have to heal from every day. But as far as the framing of Black Lives Matter in that sense, I think after Trayvon Martin, it became somewhat of a rallying cry and starting to gain traction. So that's my 2 cents.
Go ahead, Melania.
You're mute.
We can't hear you.
I'm gonna unmute you. There you go. Now you're muted.
I was saying I felt just like David. When I was reading the question, it was like, how do I answer that? Because this has been around, right? We learned about this going to school, even like this been a movement. So it's very hard to answer that. I mean, I've been always aware of the movement with Trayvon Martin, like, for instance, that strikes something in me. And from then, like, I started, like, getting more involved. And then, the death of my sister, like, that really, like, it just made me feel like it's just because I, like, for instance, like, for me, I would never go to movements. I would never, like, even still with some of the things of my sister, I'm like, I'm not gonna go. A lot of people are not gonna show up. They're not gonna, they're gonna come there. They're gonna hear us pour ourselves, our heart out and go home and do nothing, right? But at the same time, there is people there that, that they care and they are there, and they care about us and they show up, and those are the ones that matter. Those are the ones that matter. Those are the ones that we need to show up for, and we need to show up for ourselves over and over and over again, right? I mean, for me, after the loss of my sister, I've became very aware of, like, my surroundings.
You're back to mute.
Sorry.
There you go.
I became very aware of my surroundings, more aware than I was even before, because you see this on the news all the time, right? And you never think it could happen to you. You never think it could knock on your door. right? And that was me. It's like I knew about the movement. I was aware of it. You know, I've seen a lot of things. I follow a lot of, you know, different articles of different things that have happened, but I wasn't really as focused as I am until now that, you know, I lost my sister. And that's the thing. We shouldn't wait until tragedy happens to us for us to stand up and do something, right? It takes zero time of your life to put a little something out there that's going to change the world. I mean, we can't change the world all by ourselves. Let's face it. But if we all put like a little something, I think the world will be a better place. And I think we need to keep pushing forward, and we can't like give up. You know, this fight didn't start with us. I mean, we have great leaders that passed this on to us, and we have to continue to show up, and we have to continue to be there. And, you know, I mean, for me, like, it started with 600 people in the rally to the Brooklyn Liberation. I'm talking to over 15,000 people. So it is, you know, we can change lives. We can touch people. We can reach people. You know, we just have to put ourselves, like, we have to stop thinking and having the mentality as nobody cares about us. Cause, you know, I was like that. Nobody cares about us. Why am I showing up? You know, if something happens here and this world gets out of control here in America, I'm going back to my country. I was one of those. Like, I'm gonna go. I'm out. I'm not staying here. And it's not okay, right? Because there's other people out here that need our help, that don't have our, you know, our voice, that can't stand up for themselves. And you know, there's others that lost their lives, that don't have a voice, that, you know, some of them, they go without nobody speaks about them. They go on, you know, unnoticed, or they get swept under the rug. So yeah, for me, the Black Life Matters movement's been around for a while, but I feel like we all need to apply ourselves a lot more to it.
Thank you. You were so right. Alrighty, next question is, what has been your experience of navigating through this current climate?
You speaking to me?
All of us on the panel.
Oh.
Can I just say, I'm sorry, because this fires
Yes.
me just a little bit. I'm sorry. And then I'm not going to be all like this the rest of the time. But what I have found to be really disheartening is that the message of Black Lives Matter, I found that there's so much effort, time, and energy being put into what Black Lives Matter means, and trying to get people to understand what it does not mean, that the power and the message behind what that really means is often drowned out, or you know, I hate to say it, but I'm gonna just say it. It's the All Lives Matter people. It's the All Lives Matter people. So before getting to talk about Black Lives Matter, you've got to go and you've got to say, no, this is not what it means. No, this is not what we said. No, it's just Black Lives Matter, period. And I find that I wish it didn't, the conversation didn't have to start with the deconstruction of, you know, of words. And it's a sad situation, because all you have to do is just listen. You're going to get all the answers that you need, but the pent up rage and aggression about letting that sentence just be with a period often overtakes what it's meant to stand for, and what it's supposed to represent, and what it's supposed to mean, and what we're supposed to do with that information. So I'm just going to say sorry about that, but that's just the whole thing. I wish we didn't have to, you know.
No, but I think like that's important, right? Like that's one of the major reasons why, like, when we talk about things that are you know, things coming to a halt, right? And like that's kind of what we're here, and we'll talk about further, and we can jump into it now, is that like Black Lives Matter is this, you know, great organization, great existence, whatever, but then people start to deconstruct, well, if Black Lives Matter, then you're saying this doesn't matter. If all lives matter, da da da. But it's like, when we get down to the principles of Black Lives Matter, like, right, it's these principles: diversity, restorative justice, unapologetically Black, Black families, Black women, Black villages, globalism, loving engagement, empathy, queer affirming, transgender affirming, intergenerational collective value. Like, that's what it's about. And none of that says, oh, this other culture is not as important. It doesn't say that anything is less than. It says, like, Black Lives Matter. These are the things that we're focusing on, and these are the things that we're uplifting, because historically it's been shown that we don't treat them with much value, because our statistics show that we have a really huge problem when it comes to incarceration, when it comes to health, when it comes to hate crimes, right? Like, so it doesn't, I mean, it's like, it's super frustrating for me as well. But I also think, like, the point that I was getting to is that I feel like the reason why because of course, like, with George Floyd, Black Lives Matter became like this big, huge thing, right? And it, great. And then it also started to slow down, and it started to slow down in a really, like, quick way. And I think it was, like, exactly what you're talking about. People starting to say, oh, well, what is this? What is that? You can take off the screen, Aaliyah. People are saying, like, well, what does this mean? All lives matter. Let's break this down. And then that became so much of the conversation that we moved out of the action. Like, it, like, took over so much that, like, because we're trying to break down this, that, and the other, instead of staying focused on the mission, now we're at a point where I'm disappointed in the world, because I'm like, what happened? Like, what happened?
Totally. And I said I wasn't going to do it. I said I wasn't going to do it.
No, girl, do it.
I like couldn't help myself. I couldn't do it. So the other thing too is, like, in that conversation of Black Lives Matter, there's so many, as you saw from, like, that PowerPoint, there's so many segmented subsets of populations that it's like, look, a lot of y'all may not even know this out here, but a Black trans woman's life expectancy is 35 years. 35 years. That's how long you're expected to be on this planet in your existence based on being Black. You know what I'm saying? So there's so many subsets of conversations that need to happen within.
Come back to a section.
That sometimes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sometimes I wish we just take a moment and just allow these conversations to occur without all of the rebuttal. You get so much information. I don't know how many of y'all knew that, but when I found out that trans women are only expected to be on this planet for 35 years, that shit infuriated me, and that's where the conversation of Black Lives Matter and all the subsets of Blackness that exists, every piece and type of marginalized person that you are. And so sometimes I guess that's a lot of the conversation is just being like, shh, shh, don't say nothing. Just listen. Just listen sometimes. Like what I'm about to do.
Yeah, David, I'd love to hear your perspective on this.
Thank you. And thank you for the powerful share, sister. I really appreciate that. To answer the question, I'm frustrated, right? And it's funny how I'm frustrated because my friend's son got shot 86 times by the police, and he's paraplegic, and he got assassinated, and they victim blamed him, pretended that he had a gun. They did all these different things, right? The playbook. It's the playbook when somebody a black man gets killed in this society. The playbook of slandering his character and dragging him through the mud, and then that happens, and then there's crickets, right? And then what something horrible happens, and it's horrible what happened to George Floyd, right? And now everybody cares, right? So just to how that sits on, like, somebody from our community, right? From our community, I'm from Seattle. This is happening here. And nobody cares, though. But everybody wants to march now, though, something that happened in Minnesota, right? But all these kids and these youth and people that are dying out here every day due to police violence, there's not a bumper sticker, there's not a t-shirt, there's nothing worth really putting a voice to. And not only that, it's all the same playbook. And so it's been frustrating for me because I care about this before it was a fad, before other people cared. I care because this is our community and this is happening. These are my relationships. This is happening. And so that frustrated me about that is people say that it's important and that Black Lives Matter, but it doesn't seem so. It's not playing out like that as I'm seeing what's happening inside our community. And the other piece of it is, the other frustration piece is the system is how it is and how it's always been for a reason, right? It always self-corrects, right? It evolves. You know what I mean? They passed the 13th Amendment. They put that carve out for a reason so that it can continue, right? It's never stopped. It's just evolved. And I see that's what's happening now, right? At first you get all this push. They're talking about defund the police. They're talking about all these, what could be potentially systemic changes, right? And then now when you get into the nuts and bolts, the systems start to self-correct. Now they're talking about defunding the police and investing inside the same, in other systems, not just this system, but in other systems, which also disproportionately negatively impact our community. You know what I mean? Our communities are in the position that they are because they're not well resourced, not because we don't have enough system support. And I think that's my frustration is I'm starting to see people come with the solutions and the solutions are coming further away from community. And they're starting to look like the same tools that helped build this, that's been holding this thing in place for so long. And so that's kind of my frustration too. I'm seeing corporations and companies talk about Black Lives Matter. And I know that it's a tactic. You know what I mean? It's a tactic and it's a ploy because I see how your hiring practices haven't changed. The way you treat Black folks in your community and in your company hasn't changed. Nothing has really changed. You think that if you just say great things in a nice, wordy document that, but that's the way that our society has always, especially when it comes to our lives and our value, is it's always been lip service, right? When it comes to because when it comes to privilege, people with privilege, equity feels like oppression. So even though there's white people that really believe that needs to change and really feel bad about what's happening in our community, but it's tough to give up something. It's tough to give up an advantage and a privilege that might benefit your children and your kids. You know what I mean? So when it comes time to have to sacrifice something, it always self-corrects. And so that's, you know, sorry for taking so much oxygen out the room.
No. That was like, that's a fact. Like, I'm gonna let Melania go. Go ahead, Melania. No, mute. Unmute, girl. We gotta get the mute button. Hold on, I got you. Don't worry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm having a fight with the mute button. I feel the same. I feel like, you know, people are forgetting. They forgetting the purpose behind this. It just became a movement, right? Like it's just a movement. It's just a name. It's just a tag. It's just oh, I'm gonna put this here to make this look good. No, this is our lives. Like we're living like this. So we're not a tag. We're not a movement. We want to be heard. We want change. Like, it's very frustrating. Like, look at my sister, a transgender woman, you know, Afro-Latina color woman. And I mean, there's videos out there of these officers just laughing when they could have been helping her. They could have been helping her. Like, the system is so messed up, and she was only placed there, like, let's be, you know, honest, because of her gender identity. Like, you know, like, and it's not okay. We're not a movement. Like, people need to really get out there and you know, if your friends could go out with you on a weekend and get drunk, they could go out with you and make a difference and go to a rally or stand up with you, hang flyers out. Like, stop standing home and thinking that just because you go to a rally or you show face, you're supporting us. That's not supporting. That's what people are not understanding. That's not supporting us. Supporting us is when you go home, don't just go home like, oh, I'm tired. This rally was all day. No, there's more to it. Make those phone calls, send those emails, and write those letters. You know, look for organizations that you know, that are doing something for the community. Make your small donations. Like, it's insane how the world is, right? We're not a show. Like, stop coming. A lot of people just come out because they have nothing to do. Oh yes, I'll go. I have nothing to do today. I'll go support. We're more than just a movement. Like, I know firsthand the frustration. Like, look at these officers a year later, when they should have been held accountable a year ago. All right, right after the death of my sister, a year later, they only get what, a suspension and internal punishment. For what? If I would have not been out there, or my sister name would have not been out there, like, you know, and this pressure would have not really been applied the way it's been applied, they probably would have yet to do something. They probably would have still been working. Like, you know, like, it's so sad. We're not just a movement. Okay, we want to be heard. We want change. We don't want people to just show up to rallies and you know, just be there with their little flag and their little. Sometimes I get frustrated because sometimes I think to myself, like, what do they really do after this when they go home? Like, you know, we out there and we pouring ourselves. Like, we are opening our hearts to you guys, to them, and it's like, you come to hear us, and then right after that, what do you really do? We go home broken. We go home feeling empty. We go home trying to hold on to that little faith, trying to hold on to that little string, telling yourself, I think today I touch a couple of people. I think, like, you know, it's a process, and some people just don't understand that. Some people think, oh, it's easy. They just go up there. They talk. No, it takes a lot. It takes a lot. And a lot of us that do go up there, it's, you know, this is from trauma that we experience ourselves. Like, you know, and we out there, and that's how I became a activist, right? This is how I became into this work, because I was crushed. I was hurt by the system. I was, you know, my sister was, you know, as a transgender woman, she was discriminated by in every way you could name. And, you know, and she will come home and tell me these frustrations. It's not okay. It's not okay. Like, we have to do more than this. People need to realize that just coming out there just to show face and to wave a little poster, that's not enough. It's not enough. Like, more gotta happen. It's not enough. I'm sorry, guys.
Thank you, Melania. No, it's real shit. And so next question that we have is, like, so we're gonna ask this other question first, but I want to take a moment to kind of really go off of what you said about trauma. And I think, like, that's one of the biggest things that people kind of don't understand about when you're doing this activism work, is that it's fucking traumatic. Like, people don't really understand that, especially when you are of the community that you're fighting for, right? Like, it's traumatic. Like, I know for me as a doula, like, continuously seeing Black birthing people die for no reason is traumatic. And my work as a somatic experience practitioner, hearing about other people's traumas, like, all that is traumatic. Like, it is something that I'm interested to know. Like, I have two questions, two of them. And I know Leah was gonna ask one of them. But my question is, one, like, how do we as Black people, as, you know, marginalized communities, as people who are, like, moving shit forward, who, like David said, we've been about this shit for mad long before this slogan became, like, commercialized. How are we dealing with our trauma? That's my first question. And then my second question is, how do we call other people in? So I guess we'll go with the first question. So how are you all dealing with your trauma, and, like, what does your trauma look like? Like, like, give us the real world, like, look into what it feels like and what it looks like to do the work that you do. Yeah, Melania. We're gonna unmute you. I got you. Go ahead.
It's a roller coaster. You know, you have good days, you got bad days. Like, sometimes I wake up and I'm like, okay, today I'm okay. I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna push forward. And there's days that I wake up and I'm like, I don't want to get out of bed. Nobody come in the room. I just want to be left alone. Like, you know, like, I have those days. I am human. Like, I break down a whole lot, you know, and I take on more. I mean, for me, what keeps me moving forward is actually what I do. Like, you know, getting out there, knowing that I can make a difference, knowing that I can, you know, touch lives and, you know, things like that. That's what helps me keep moving. Like, you know, with my trauma, and it's like in a sense, it's like it's draining, but it's healing at the same time, because I feel like I am, like, you know, I am making a difference. People are hearing me, and, you know, but it is very, very difficult to deal with and also go out there, because you have to, it's like you're repeating and you're reopening that wound over and over and over and over again, right? I mean, for me, sometimes I don't even know how to slow down. Like, you know, I have this close friend that I met through, you know, my sister's passing, which Eliel Cruz from the Anti-Violence Project, you know, he's the one that sometimes he's like, no, you're not, slow down. You don't need to do this today. You know, because if it's up to me, I just keep going until I just, like, I run into this wall, and now I need like a week. Nobody talks to me, you know, and it's very hard. It's like you want to give yourself it all in because it's what's helping you, but at the same time, it's
depleting you.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think like that's like, I know for me, like I literally, and y'all might have saw my Instagram story, I was laying in bed last night and I was like, when's the last time I had a day off? So I looked and I was like, shit, I've been working for 20 days straight. Like, and it doesn't even, like, for me, it's like that same thing where, like, when you know what you want, like when you know like the impact you have, when you know like these purposes that are so much, they're bigger than you, like you get so like, you just get into it, and before you know, you're like, oh shit, and then you hit that wall, and then you're like, don't talk to me for a week.
Yeah.
But I would love some feedback from Stephanie and David. Stephanie, go first.
Okay, ask the question one more time, because I just had
So
to.
I said, what do you do, or like, how do you handle the trauma that's created by the work that you do?
A lot of people ask me that, actually. They're like, how do you decompress? What do you do that, what's your well-being? What do you know, how do you get by? And do we got any babies in here? I'm about to say something real quick, cover the little babies here. Here, but I'm a creative bitch. You know what I'm saying? Like, I like to create things on the internet for fun and for people. But I find that that's a way to engage people in a larger part of the conversation. I like a good, you know, kiki and a chuckle, and I like to disseminate information that way. But that is also my own therapy, the giving, you know, and the connecting with people for a larger purpose, so that, you know, we share common goals. Because, you know, Melania and all of the people who be out here on the streets holding the signs, God, listen, I love y'all. It's not everyone's strong suit. I got anxiety. I will still drag me out of there. I cannot do that. I cannot. But we've got to find our strong suit. We've got to find what works for us and what keeps us, you know, active in the movement. And so sometimes that's, you know, creating engaging content on the internet, but for purpose, you know what I'm saying? So that we can start talking about these things. Because what I do find to be draining, and that's because I interact with a lot of people on the internet, is the information that comes quickly. Like, for example, you know, when Shasia Washington died, when you know, when that hit, you know, that kind of, those types of things are violent to me in a real way. You know what I'm saying? Because I work in labor and birth spaces, and I understand the failings of why these things occur. And those things hurt. Those things are super damaging. And I don't have a way to not process that, because, you know, I'm in birth work. People are going to talk about, you know, Shalon Irving, and people are going to talk about, you know, Black women who die and are mistreated in the hands of the medical industrial complex or hospitals. And that could take a lot out of me. That can take a lot out of me. And sometimes I'm like, oh, today I am off, because we have Black pain, hurt, and suffering in a hospital space. And I know the type of situations that probably led up to it. And we hear a lot of things that, you know, conversations that are like, well, these are the reasons why, or that's not exactly how it happened, or that I got to tap out. I got to tap out and I got to disappear and I got to go away, because it's a lot to constantly hear that as the backdrop to Black pain, hurt, and death. Okay, so the way that I get around it and process it is coming and talking to the people, you know, and having a great time, but getting the information out there in whichever way that we can, because I know a lot of people aren't going to birth. A lot of people are not going to birth, but if these conversations don't get out there and it doesn't become common knowledge, ways to navigate hospital spaces safely, then we're going to continue to see cases like, you know, name just whatever. Y'all know the names. Y'all know the names of the people that you know, one thing led to another, led to another, led to another. And as a result, we have a situation where someone's lost their Black life. And so anyway, I know that I answered the question somewhere in there for you guys. Sprinkled in there with all the other things.
You did.
I did, right? I did. Thank you.
I know, girl. I know you. I know you're a little off track sometimes. It's all right.
Well, just guide me back in. Guide me back in. I'll get there.
What about you, David?
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. Well, I'm like on the front line of when you talk about the ramifications of white supremacy culture, right? Dealing with, it's difficult, right? It's traumatic. And so there's been a lot of shootings in the community. I know we're trying to do a lot with the gun violence and to support the community and the youth in a way that could unravel some of these circumstances that create those circumstances, right? And we're dealing with that. I told you about my friend's son who got killed by the police, and another friend of mine's son got shot 5 times, and just had to go watch 2 youths get sentenced to 40 years. So it's so unconscionable to me that a child, like, it doesn't make sense to me. And so you spoke about that secondary trauma piece, that weighs heavy. I think a sad reality is I've been through so much trauma that I have a higher pain tolerance. But to really connect with my humanity, I shouldn't be expected to be able to have to continue to, you know what I mean? But I'm able to navigate and deal because of how horrible the trauma has been, abuse have been in my life. And so the sad thing is I depend on my community, my wife and my family to hold me accountable when it comes to my self-care, because I won't, I won't, I'll just go and go and go, because it's not like I have a regular job where I'm creating widgets, I'm helping the community, right? And I don't know where that stops. When somebody needs you, I don't know what it looks like not to say no in an instance like that. And I know people, you got to have boundaries, but what does that look like when and I struggle with that. And so I need my community to they hold me accountable. We went on a little mini staff retreat because some of our care corners demanded it. Like, we need a break. And it was great. I would have never thought of that. I just put my head down and think about what other fire needs to be put out. But so that's what I do, though. I try to make space, and I allow for everybody to hold me accountable. There's not pushback, because I know I need it, and I'm just grateful that they're willing to support me in that way. And so that's how I deal with the traumatic aspects of the work I do and the world I live in.
Yeah, supportive community is so important. On that note, how can white folks help us in this? How can we call them in to start doing the majority of this work? What do we need from them? Go ahead, Dr. Stephanie.
There she goes.
I wasn't even gonna. I was just saying, like, oh, did you want the list? Did you want the list?
No, but David was ready. David was ready. Come on, David.
Come on. Come on.
Oh, okay. Well, I got my list ready. Get her list ready. No, like real stuff though. We do a lot of anti-oppression workshops and stuff like that. When they say like, I want people who identify as white and who have historically been overvalued in our society and been given this privilege. I would to understand how dehumanizing white supremacy culture is to everybody. Just because you're overvalued and you get privileges doesn't mean you're not being dehumanized in this process. You know what I mean? When you're trying to, the mechanisms of perfectionism and all these other instruments of white supremacy culture that hurt and damage you. The most privileged people in our society are cisgendered, white, middle-aged men. And if you check, they're also got the highest suicide rate in this country as well. So I just really want to make space for that. Like, our liberation is tied together. This isn't about doing us a favor. This is about our liberation is tied together. White supremacy culture damages all of us and impacts us all, and dehumanizes all of us. And so I just want to say that piece. And it's really about doing our internal work. Doing your internal work is probably the most important thing you do. You being able to work on your biases and your lens in a way that you can see the humanity of everybody is important to us being able to show up as a society in the way that we want to show up. I think that's the most important thing, because our communities absolutely need to be resourced. Absolutely need to be resourced. You know, it's like we've been playing a Monopoly game, and for 10 rounds, we haven't been able to roll the dice, right? And so there is the difference between communities with a lot of violence and not a lot of violence isn't police, it's resources. A community with no violence has a lot of resources. Those without don't have any. And so I just want to just say that if you have the space and time and resources to be able to support community organizations that are doing the work, to support the movements that are actually led and centered in the voices of those of the problem that you're trying to solve, then please do that. And that's an important piece of the puzzle, of centered in, led by those who are directly impacted by the problems that we wish to change, because those voices are more powerful, and their solutions are more effective. You know what I mean? And so I would say that it's doing your internal work, because you can even give money, but the reality is if you're not doing your internal work, that affects how you vote, that affects who you hire, that affects who you allow to live, rent a property to. That affects all these other aspects of your life that affects our lives as a community. And so it's really doing your internal work. And if you have the resources, please support, because we need those resources. And nonprofit industrial complex is created in such a way where we're still separated from these resources, even though we have the solutions that actually work.
You said a word
So
there,
I'll let
sir.
Stephanie finish.
You said a word. Stephanie, you wanted to say something?
I just want to, can you hear me? Okay, I just want to really piggyback and commiserate really on what David was saying. And I often say this is, I don't know. We don't know what your existence is. Like, I speak through the lens of birth work, and this is what I know well. I don't know what y'all do. You know, maybe you're an author. I don't know. Maybe you work at a laundromat. I don't know. You've got to find out, you know, in your life, the ways that you can dismantle this, you know, and figure out where the weaknesses lie in your community. And you do that by listening to the people in the community you want to affect. So it's going to start with one. What I need from y'all, I need y'all to listen. I need y'all to listen. And depending on who it is that you're listening to, you're going to find your answer. You're going to find it. So I speak through the lens, of course, of birth work, because it's what I know. I ask people that come into the space to listen, to participate, to declare themselves, you know, to show that they do not have any ill intentions and that they're there to listen. And I'm going to tell you, each and every time, I'm going to tell you what it is that you could be doing so that you can dismantle this oppressive system for those who are being hurt disproportionately. And those are Black and brown people. So I just ask you to identify that in your own space. You know, if you need people to shine a light on that, or, you know, microscope in the ways that which your existence is harmful to people of color, strictly on the basis of this is how you landed here, this is how you got here, and you just landed here and you happen to be white, okay? Like, figure that piece out. I can't, and nobody else can say, oh, well, you work in, you know, literature development, you work in furniture, you know, building, but examine your own walked existence and do that work, because I do know in birth work, you are not only not helpful, but you are not an asset, and you're actually obstructive. You're actually obstructive to those who are trying to do the work if you haven't dismantled, you know, your privilege, your own privilege, and try to step into birth work for people who need your help the most. Like, you're doing the absolute worst thing that you could be doing. You've got to go out there, go into your little, what is it, Sabia? The little birth advocacy doulas they need to do, you know, and figure out that first, because you actually become a disservice to those who need the help the most. So that's what y'all can do. That's a concrete step.
Thank you, Stephanie. Melania, did you want to say something? Oh, we're gonna unmute you. I got you. I got you. There you go.
Guys, I'm gonna get it together before we're done with this. I mean, David and Stephanie, I mean, they pretty much cover everything. I mean, listen, if you listen to us and listen to, instead of just going there and just with a little poster waving it, yeah, listen and go home and do something about it. You know, there's many things that could be done, many things that you could do. Just don't show up just to wave your little poster and say, well, I was there, I supported. No, that's not support. You know, show up, listen, and then go home and do something about it. Don't go home and just sit on your couch and feel like you did something because you went to a rally, because that's not enough.
Right. And I call that wasting your free Black time. Don't be out here wasting people's free Black time. And by that, I mean, like, you have now absorbed this intellectual property, right? And to do nothing with it is a waste of our free Black time. Like, you could have done not that. You could have took a nap. You could have cleaned the toilet. You could have swept the stairs. So I find that to be, you know, it's pointless if you're wasting our time, if you're out there with your signs, or if you're on your digital platform and you're not doing anything with it, go do something else.
And I'm gonna say that one of the things that, like, y'all, some of y'all know the work that I do, but same thing that I always say, like, it's one thing for a white ally to say, oh, I believe in what you believe in. I believe you should have fairness and equality and equity and all that other stuff. But when you're still comfortable in your whiteness and you're still using that to your benefit and not to the benefit of me, then you're just as bad as the other people who are blatantly racist, right? So you have to move into being a white accomplice, which says that I'm going to use my privilege, my access, my whatever the hell I have for the benefit, and I'm going to ask the people that I'm trying to help, but how do they want me to do it? When do you want me to do it? Where do we do it? So I'm going to follow your lead, understanding that you know the direction and I can trust where you're going, right? And the thing for me is, like, white people have to build a capacity to talk about race. White people have to build more of a capacity to deal with race. I am more than exhausted by white silence. I'm also more than exhausted by the white people who's a better anti-racist thing. Like, oh no, I did this, so I'm better at not being racist. Oh, I did this, so I'm better at not being racist. I don't really care about that. I want you to do the work, right? Like, do the actual work. And when I ask you about doing the work, I don't want to hear, well, my job has anti-racism training happening. That is not enough. Thank you for your job in implementing that thing for you to follow, but what are you doing at home with your kids, with your family, with anyone you're connected with? Are you still in white privilege, living comfortably and just saying Black Lives Matter? Are you doing the work, taking the risk? Because understanding that your risk that you're taking is way less than I take. Like, it doesn't even match what we deal with on a regular basis just because we were born in Black ass skin. Like, so when you understand that and you take your ego out of it and you could build capacity for race, and I'm not just saying, like, build capacity in the sense of you could talk about race, but you can understand where you have perpetuated white supremacy. And you can be okay with that. And you can correct that. But when people don't want to do that internal work that David is talking about, that's when we get into this whole, like, I'm a white ally, I'm a white accomplice, but it's only self-fulfilling, right? So really you're just working as a white savior. Oh, I do this because it makes me feel better. I do this because of that. You need to be doing the work for the people who need it. And like Stephanie said, if you're not able to do that, then you need to get the fuck out of the way. Like, don't waste our free Black time.
Just want to know, those wasn't exactly my words. I didn't know if we in a safe space, I could just say that, but I thought it. Say the fuck out of my, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like about like getting out of the way and really understanding, where am I in this, right? Like, where do I fall into white supremacy? What privileges do I have? How have I been utilizing those privileges for myself, and how can I flip that so that I can be helping marginalized communities, right? And like, those are big questions, but I feel like a lot of times white people have a hard time with just coming to like a true understanding of their own whiteness, right? And they begin to direct it to other white people. Well, you're doing this, and you have this privilege, and well, you're much richer than me, so you're da da da, and you have this other identity that's you're all white though. Like, you're all white. So work on that. Like, that is what's gonna be helpful to moving us to a better, more helpful, more communal, more shared, more powerful space. And I think the point that David said around really understanding, David said, I wrote it down, people with privilege think equity feels like oppression. And I was like, that's the part. Like, white people have to understand that it is going to be uncomfortable for some of your power to be taken away. It is going to be uncomfortable. You're going to want to hold on to that power. You are going to want to like do whatever you can to keep it, but you have to consciously say to yourself, I'm letting this go for the liberation of all of us. For all of us. Because it's uncomfortable. Any person, I don't care what, any type of binary, man, woman, black, white, when we have to share power, it's like, oh shit. Right? Like cis women do with trans women. Everyone does it in some type of binary. But we have to understand that in order for us to move forward, we have to share the power. And sharing power is beautiful. Like, that's how we're supposed to live. So before we continue, I'm going to show you a little bit about A Lifetime in Quarantine, which Melania, Stephanie, and David, you have a seat in if you want to be in it. It'd be really good for you, David, especially for you, Melania, too, because it really talks about building skills within ourselves for those people that keep going, those people that like are like, okay, I don't want to go on a like vacation to do self-care. How can I do self-care in this moment right now in my body? Because I'm standing at this, rally for 10 hours and like I'm fucking pissed. I'm fucking exhausted, whatever it is. And it's really about finding the resources that have been in us, which is why our generations and why they can't get rid of us. Because like this blackness, it don't go nowhere and they be mad. So let me show you this really quickly and then we'll have a Q&A. So some of you have already been in this class with me before, but I'm going to tell you what it is again. Here we are. So Lifetime in Quarantine, which is Trauma Skills and Nervous System Understanding for BIPOC folks. It starts September 15th at 1 p.m. So the reason why this class was created was because my friend Kimberly has this class called Activate Your Inner Jaguar, where she teaches like these whole like somatic skills. And I was like, oh, this is so helpful to me. Like, it really did change my life, which is why I'm an SCP now in training. But I was like, also, there's a lot of white people here. So when we're talking about trauma, it just doesn't apply to me the same way. Like, I was like, when we're talking about trauma, white people are saying how they're trying to find safety within themselves. And I was like, because they feel like things are a threat. I was like, but what happens when you're the threat? Like, what happens when you walk in a room and you're the threat? What happens when you come into a space and people are looking at you some type of way? And so you're trying to like regulate, how can I be in this space safely, but also please them so they don't find that I'm a threat? And also, how can I find safety for myself because I'm in a position that I don't feel safe in? So anyway, in this class, we just learn things like how to move out of freeze. We learn trauma skills such as fight, flight, and freeze. We learn things about how to actually access emotional regulation practices, how to move from self-doubt and judgment to radical respect and admiration. We also connect to our history and ancient wisdom, because that's what has us here, that generational wealth, that generational knowing that we all have inside of us. And we have in-depth knowledge about nervous systems. So who is this class for? It's for BIPOC folks, as well as white accomplices. So when I say white accomplices, please let me explain that. when you are in this space for white accomplices, it is going to be a shift of power in this space. So when you came in here today, we let BIPOC people with their cameras on first so that they can see each other, and you put your cameras on second. That is a practice that we follow within the class. Every teacher that you're going to have is going to be a person of color. Every time that we are doing an event, it will be centering people of color. The lens of which we will be talking about things will be from the perspective and the lens of people of color. The reason why we are doing this is because I want you to imagine what it feels like to be a Black person, a brown person who's always taught by white teachers, always taught white history, always taught what it means, like what is professionalism, what is the right way to be, all this is which is in line with whiteness. So this experience, especially for the last time, for a lot of white people was like, I never even thought about the fact that I never get taught or that I'm never centering people of color, even in a fucking Zoom space. so here we are. And then, so the class format is 4 weeks. We have a class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We also have other goodies in between. On Tuesday, you meet with me and I teach you a skill, which is always fun. Aaliyah was in that class. A few of you actually were in this class. On Thursday, we have our guest speaker. And we also have a private Facebook community. We have actually 3. One that's a mixed space, one is a BIPOC only, and then we have a non-BIPOC. So we don't even say white in a class, we say non-BIPOC. We're like, BIPOC, non-BIPOC. So we have those spaces as well. So we have 3 different levels of payment, and all of them give you access to the class in its entirety. The reason why we have 3 tiers is just to make it more accessible. So right now, the community level is $89, sustainer is $189, supporter is $289. So for the white accomplices that are in the space who want to be in the class, I do ask you if you have the means to pay at least your rate or the supporter rate, because it gives me the funds to be able to support BIPOC folks who maybe cannot afford to be in the space. The last class we did, we had at least 80 to 100 free BIPOC spaces that we were able to pull together. And then I'm your teacher, and we're gonna have Juliana Luna. Some of you may know her. She's gonna be teaching the Aluna method. I know we love Juliana. So she talks about moon education in the Yoruban perspective. That shit is fire. Like, it's fire. Most of the time we're learning about lunar education, we're learning it from a white perspective. So her bringing in that Yoruban tradition and perspective is amazing. We also have Bernadette Pleasant, who's like my auntie now. I know. She's gonna be talking about grief and the somatic experience, because one thing that Black people know about, one thing that brown people know about is grief. We're grieving shit on a regular basis from, I mean, right now it's COVID. I mean, as birth workers, it's all these disproportionate rates. For David, it might be the level of incarceration, continuous murders of Black people for no reason. Melania, you know, I know obviously you talk about grief in your process as well. But the thing is, like, I feel like in Black culture, although we experience grief, we don't actually talk about it. We don't actually learn what we can do about it. We just hold on to it and we keep going and going and going. And then we have a breakdown. And then we're like, oh, grief. And then we go back to doing what we were doing, right? So Bernadette really is like, oh my gosh, she's like the auntie of the class, and she gets it together. We also have Mike Wells, who will be talking about inequity. And it's just amazing because last time we had all women speakers, but this time we have a male, because I feel like it's so important to show like Black male joy. Like, and I don't think a lot of white people specifically get to see Black male joy. They see Black males getting shot. They see them in fight mode because something is happening. They see them as the aggressor. They see them as this. But do they get to actually see Black male joy and someone who's going to be teaching you something that you may not know? So I'm going to put the link in here. And for now, we can move on to Q&A. So if you have a question, you can actually ask it on mic. I'll do this. If you put in the chat that you have a question, we can just call on you and you can ask the question.
So far, we've had a really great question. Someone was asking about donating money and if it's better to donate smaller amounts over a period of time or one large lump sum. And I want to get everyone's thoughts and opinions on money donation in general and also that question.
I feel like David has something to say about this. I feel like David probably knows about this whole, could you talk about the nonprofit industrial complex? Oh, you can't mute yourself? Hold on. There you go.
All right, I was muzzled. I was like, what's
Yeah.
going on? Zoom is arm wrestling with me. Ain't gonna let me talk. No, absolutely. I think when it comes to donating, I think depending on what your circumstances and situations are, it'd be appreciated. Either way works. I think that if you have the opportunity to lump sum it, I think that you give whoever you're giving it to more options on how to use it because they have it to use now, right? And so, but I think at the end of the day, it's whatever your situation and circumstance looks. I think that donating is a powerful way of getting your voice heard and supporting because the way that the society is constructed, and because like we don't really plug into all nonprofit industrial complex options. You know what I mean? We say no. We say no if we don't share the same values. And if your expectation is that we show up differently than how our community expects us to show up. I think so. I think that it's a great thing to be able to give agency to a community organization that's really doing the work for the community. And so I think that's such an important piece of the puzzle. But whatever is comfortable for you, though, I would say. But if you're in a position to, the lump sum would be probably best because it gives the person you're giving it to more options. And I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what this is about giving people who understand the solutions to the problems we're trying to fix more options to implement those solutions.
Yeah, and I also was gonna say too, like, I also see like giving a donation, like that's a great thing, like David said. But see it as like a part of the work, but not the only thing that you're doing.
Right.
Right. So like see it as like a first step, see it as a continuous thing that you do, but also have 2 or 3 other things that you could be doing.
Right. Oh, thank you, Sabia. That's what I'm talking about. That's why you're space. No, that's so true. Because we think about people who donate, like there's no difference between a volunteer and a donor, right? I think that we're all in the movement together, right? And we're building our community out and we're in relationship. You know what I'm saying? So the expectation is everybody who's supporting the movement is doing that internal work. See, at the Freedom Project, we have anti-oppression framework that we do as a organization and we get on the same page so we can do it together and support each other.
You went mute, wait.
Oh,
go ahead.
There we go. See, Zoom.
No.
I tell you, listen. No, and so that's what I'm saying. I appreciate you naming that piece because us doing our internal work goes with everything else that you want to do, aspire to do in the work. Mm-hmm. You know, there's no easy fix where you can give money and the fact of the matter is we can't do this work in silos. We can't solve this problem alone. It's going to take all of us as a community to come together to solve this problem. And that's you and me doing my internal work because internalized oppression is just as real, you know? And so I just really thank you for naming that. That's very important work is that we continue to do our personal work and self-education and interrogating ourselves on how we're showing up in every moment, especially in mixed company.
For sure. Thank you, David. Was there any other questions, Aaliyah?
No, but an excellent comment. Someone drawing a parallel between anti-racism work and anti-capitalism work.
For sure.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have a question? If they want to come in, just put it in the chat. Just say, hey, I have a question, or just type the question in. We have a couple more minutes before we skedaddle. Everyone's quiet. Y'all scared?
Yeah. Also, if you're worried about asking a question, that's okay. Okay, someone said advice for how to deal with an ally that comes into spaces and doesn't listen or is louder than they use the word oppressed. Is there such a thing as being too zealous?
See, I'm really direct in my spaces. So like, so part of the work that I do, which is like this nervous system work, is that a lot of times when we are in circumstances that are a threat to us, which could be an ally over talking us, because that's something that white supremacy just allows and perpetuates, and it's over and over. Sometimes we, like David was saying, with like that internal work with ourselves, right? So a lot of times before I started doing SE work, I would just be like, okay, I'm just gonna be quiet because like, I don't know, I'm just gonna be quiet. I don't know, I'm gonna let them just talk. But now that I have the ability to check in with myself and see how I feel, I now have the ability to say to myself, you deserve to be here. This is your space. And this is how you need to direct this conversation. And that's simply, I'm gonna be nice. I'm not gonna be rude to you, but I'm gonna say to you like, hey, let's have a little conversation. Right? Let's have a little conversation. Just to let you know, this is a BIPOC centered space. This is, or whatever it is, whatever the oppressed group is, space. And you're taking up a lot of space. So what would be better is that maybe you need to find some other ways to get out that energy. Maybe you need to write it down. Maybe you need to, whatever it is. But if you can't respect the space that is here, you have not done enough internal work to even be able to regulate yourself in this space, then you don't need to be here, right? Because you're going to cause more of a problem, right, in this space. And this is supposed to be at least a safer space. So you have two options, right? You can do that internal work. You can listen, like Stephanie's been saying. You can get the feedback and all those different things like that. And you can either take it, do something with it that's going to be positive, so you can be maybe allowed in this space later on, or you're not. And like, if you're not, that's okay, because that's part of getting the fuck out of the way. Like, I'm not willing to whatever. I want to take up space. Okay, well then you get the fuck out the way. We'll take the people who are willing to do the work, and we'll do the work. But for me personally, when it comes to those boundaries, I'm not arguing with nobody. I'm not putting too much energy into anything. If we're all here, white, purple, blue, whatever, for the same mission, then there's an expected way that we need to behave in these spaces. If you cannot do that, if you do not have the ability or don't want to do that, then you just need not to be here. I have to focus my energy on moving shit forward, not moving shit back. So that's. Mm-hmm.
Are you done? I just wanted to add the piece about my internal work. It makes it difficult for me to create a circumstance like that with somebody, especially somebody white, because of the way that I've been conditioned as a child. You know what I mean? That was for my sake. When white people are uncomfortable, I'm not safe. That's how I've been groomed as a child, right? And so it takes a lot more emotional labor for me to step up and be able to make that type of correction. And so another strategy is also white allies, and we have white caucuses and stuff like that, where people who identify as white, who support in the work, are able to pull somebody that they share an identity with up and give them that type of education without putting that emotional labor on Black and brown folks. And so that is a strategy that can also be useful. I would always say, though, if you have privilege and you identify as white and you come into a Black and brown space, to really think about that you're centered in our society. Please don't center yourself in our space. That's impactful. And so I would hope.
It was this quote that, do you know Brittany Packnett Cunningham? So she does like all this work, and I forgot what I listened to with her, but she basically said that someone she read, I forgot who she read, was like, when white people decide to come into anti-racism work or any type of like activism work, that they should sit and listen for a year. It's just like, when you come in, just sit and listen for a year. That will give you all the information that you need, right? At least the beginning concepts of what you need, so that you won't be in here fucking shit up, basically. So we have time for one more question, and then we'll do a closing exercise.
Tracy, you can go ahead and hop in with your question. She has a verbal one she'd like to ask.
Hi. The reparations one, I don't mind if that one gets, I mean, that could be taken instead. That's certainly valuable. I'm in a very conservative Rotary group, and I've been trying to get some equity and diversity work done in there, and finally the timing is right. And so this question's around centering BIPOC people, having things being led there when that's not the group makeup yet, the push to get that makeup in that way. And so where is that transition to, we can finally get a committee and get these lessons learned, and we have a 3-year plan to educate people, get them to think about their own shit. And then speaking to the white people, you know, the non-BIPOC groups in our club, which is a majority of it, so that we can get that transition into being attractive to a bigger, diverse group. But for understandable reasons, the BIPOC people don't, some of them want to be on the panel, and some are just fatigued from being asked to be on panels because of being asked to be on too many panels. So where is that transition logistically, or just I'm learning how to take that step back and let something make sure that I'm not overrunning things and not using my whiteness in a way that's toxic. But at some point, because that's not in the group yet, like, where's that transition? I'm struggling with that. Is it just leading in that way until it becomes more open? Or does my question make sense? Mm-hmm, it's like, I'm using that kind of overpowering thing, but if I sit back, the committee might fizzle out.
I have a question. So, wanting to, real quick though, about BIPOC. Because some people in the community don't like it when people who identify as white say BIPOC as okay. One word, because people used to say POC, and then people felt like it should be Black, Indigenous, and people of color to really individualize the experiences that we've had in this country. And society likes to put us in labels and categories because it's easier and simpler. And so as a request, or I would say, could we say the whole thing as a means of acknowledging all the different experiences that those different communities have, because it's not all one experience and we're not all one thing.
Thank you.
The second piece would be about, I appreciate that, Tracy. And the second piece was about when people are doing this type of work, right? Bringing their lived experience, especially at this moment in this time, it takes a lot of emotional labor, and we should think about maybe compensating those people of color to do that work, because it seems like volunteering, but they are given more than everybody else is giving. I think and emotional labor is real, and we can have a conversation about the emotional labor that Black and brown people have to do just to show up in a space. But to actually, and the lived experience that you're really gleaning from is priceless in this work. And so I would consider, maybe, is there something that you're able to do with compensating Black and brown folks to support you in that work, to support that work there. And yes, as far as that's about, does that help?
I would definitely say too, like, I think that's a lot of times where when I see like white people come up like with resistance from BIPOC communities around these type of things, is because you have to ask yourself, what is this person getting out of this? Right? So like, if someone asks me to go to a free panel where I'm going to talk to a whole bunch of white people about my Blackness, what am I getting from that? And a lot of times it's like, I'm getting stressed. I'm not very happy. Like, and it's depleting, right? Like, as much as I know that maybe this information could be helpful for some change, it's also very depleting. So that question has to be posed, like David said, like, what would that person need to feel like it was worth their time, right? And like lived experience is worth compensation, or it's worth whatever they feel like it may be, right? Like it could be money, it could be something else. So just being mindful about like, if we are wanting to create a space that is going to be diverse, is going to be safe, is going to be a learning space, one, what do those people need to feel safe? Two, what do they need to feel like their time and their exchange of energy and education is worth it for them? What are they leaving with? A lot of times, and I'm pretty sure everyone who's on this panel can talk about, it's like we get invited to things and it's like, this is exhausting. Like, this is exhausting. Here I am talking to more white people about Blackness or about this or about that. And there has to be something that, it has to be a reason for me to be there. And it has to be something that is going to move me along my path, whether it's me paying my bills or me learning the skill or me doing whatever it is. It has to be some type of exchange. So on that note,
I agree with you.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I know,
do.
Melania, I'm pretty sure you have, because
I definitely, yes, I agree with you. It's very draining. It's very, you know, and a lot of people don't understand that. Like, it's not just us. You know, a lot of people think it's easy. Oh, they just go up there and they just talk, or like, you know, that's not. No, it's internally, like us, we're suffocated. A lot of us are drowning. A lot of us, it takes a lot for us to go in front of all these people and open up. Like, you know, like it takes a whole lot. Like for me, being a person that how I used to be, I couldn't talk to no one. Like, you know, not even my own mother. And now I'm here talking to so many people. Like that takes a lot of me just to do this right here. It took me like, you know, a few days of me telling myself I could do this. I could do this. If you notice, when I first come on, I'm nervous. This is just anxiety. This is everything going through my head. Am I going to let my sister down? Am I going to let other people down? This is everything. And a lot of us battle this a lot. So yeah, it's tough.
Thank you, Melania. So on that note, we're going to do one more somatic practice, and then we're going to end our time for today. If people have questions, we could take some of the questions and see if we can do something later to address some of them. We'll figure it out. But I do want you to know that I don't want you to like harass any of the panelists with questions unless you're compensating them, okay? Because I am, so that means that you are too, okay? So next, let's see, we're gonna do, this is actually a skill that we learned in the class, but it's called pendulation. I'm gonna try to quicken it up for us. So pendulation basically means that there's like good and there's bad, right? So let's say that the good is gonna be the color blue, bad is gonna be the color red. When we talk about pendulation, we move through pendulation every day, right? So pendulation on a regular day when you wake up, remember this side is good, this side is bad. You wake up and you're like, oh yeah, I woke up, like what a blessing. And then you're like, oh shit, I gotta go do some work that I don't feel like doing. And then you're like, oh, well, at least I have a donut that I can eat this morning. And then you're like, damn, but it's cold as hell inside, right? So you're like, honestly, you're always going back and forth between like these good and bad feelings, as well as, for example, something could feel good, right? Let's say like blue, right? And we're all grown-ups, we can talk about sex here. But like, we're talking about blue. Let's say like you have an orgasm, but then somebody keeps going and you're like, okay, no, like stop, like doesn't feel good anymore. So now you went from blue into red. And another thing that can happen is also red into blue. So red is, oh my gosh, we're going to talk about Black Lives Matter. I'm really, really uncomfortable. But then as you have the conversation and people are hearing you, you turn into blue, like Melania said, because she's like, oh, I feel not as nervous anymore. I feel like people are hearing my message, right? So what we're going to do today is kind of an exercise within ourselves around red and blue. So I want you to get comfortable, sit in your chairs, whichever way you need to. If you need to, stretch your neck around, move a little bit. All right, so I'm gonna ask you a few questions. Actually, before you close your eyes, I want you to close your eyes for a second. And I want you to tell me something that you notice in your body, a sensation. So a sensation means like, oh, my back is tight, that kind of sensation. So not how you're feeling emotionally, but actual sensation that's happening in your body. Maybe your kneecap feels loose, I don't know. Maybe your feet feel tight, and I want you to put that in the chat. Okay, my lower back is tight. Nausea, back is sore. Open chest, tight glutes, temples achy, feet hot, stiff neck, whole body is sore. Okay. So now I want you to get back to that comfortable position, whatever that may be. I want you to go back inside yourself. So that may be closing your eyes to help with that process. So you're feeling that achy back, right? Which is red generally. You're feeling like those tight glutes. Maybe your neck is sore, like David's. So now while you're kind of inside of your body, feeling your inner experience, I want you to find something, another sensation in your body that feels good or at least better than the first one that you named. Take a few seconds to find it. So remember, it doesn't have to feel perfect, just better than the sensation that you named. And then when you're ready, I want you to type that into the chat. Take your time. Sometimes it takes a little second to find that thing that feels a little better. Deep breath support, hands are soft and loose. Stiffness, I can still taste the rice pilaf I just finished. Deep breathing. My head feels light and knee feels great today. Clear breathing, warm tingly legs, relaxed legs, cool breeze on my lower leg. My hands feel soft and relaxed. My jaw isn't tight. Stomach is full. I don't feel nauseous today. Amen. My shoulders are not near my ears, for sure. So now I want you to take one more seat back with your eyes closed. And I want you to find the blue that you just named, right? So whatever that positive, or at least a little bit better sensation that's in your body, I want you to find that one more time. So now when you found that, I want you can actually give it a color. So what is that positive, not as achy, not as bad feeling? What color does it bring up for you? And you can say this to yourself. And then also, I want you to associate a smell to that good feeling. So for example, mine would definitely be my chest feels open. And so that makes me see like purple and smell lavender. So now as you're breathing, I want you to take that color and that fragrance and put it in a ball. And I want you to hold that ball in your hands. And I literally want you to like make your hands hold the ball. Now, I want you to take some nice slow breaths while you're holding that ball. That's filled with that color that makes you feel relaxed, that scent that makes you feel relaxed. And I want you to use your hands to expand it. Expand it nice and slowly. Taking deep breaths, smelling that lavender if you're like a lavender person like me. noticing when you feel stuck, and take a deep breath and continue to expand that ball. Then I want you to expand it so large that your whole body is within that ball. And if you can, I want you to expand it so large that it takes up all the space in the room. Now, while you've expanded that, I want you to check back in with your body and notice what's happening. And then our last step, I want you to take that ball, make it small again. When you're ready, nice and small again. And then I want you to just put it in your back pocket. Then when you're ready, come back. Look around the room, all around. And tell me how you feel. Muted myself. Relaxed, awake, better, thank you. Relaxed, soft, and calmer, rejuvenated, like I had a glass of wine. Light, headache is gone, body relaxed, calm, peaceful, whole. So the reason why we did that exercise is because I feel like everyone is like, after those type of conversations, we're all just like, oh, like we're ready, like we're wired. And sometimes like we just leave on that note, and then that kind of like wired feeling sometimes turns into like frustration with people that are trying to like our kids and shit. Or sometimes it's just like we can't get back to ourselves or feel present within ourselves. The other reason is that I really want people to realize like that somatic exercise is not about self-care as in finding these outside resources like going to get a massage or going on a vacation. It's about what you can do right here, right now, within your own body, within your own ability. And sometimes like, especially with people that are doing the work, the panelists that are on this call, we need to be able to tap into that for 2 minutes before we get back to the work. Right? For 2 minutes to be able to just get back to ourselves, become more present, even like realize what the fuck is going on, realize what's happening within our bodies, and like give ourselves the moment that we need. Because when you do this work, it's fucking continuous. It doesn't end, just like David said. Like, where is the boundary? Like, where do you say no? What do you do when you are the person who is doing this work, and this work is a lifetime, right? Like we've already committed to a lifetime of doing this work. So lastly, I want to thank everybody who was here. Aaliyah, can you put up the everyone's contact information? And so here's everyone's contact information. A few people have asked if they could send panelists some funds. Contact them, send them some funds, because this is what we do, okay? A little Venmo, a little PayPal, a little Cash App, whatever it is. This is all our contact information. If you're interested in donating funds to cover the seats of BIPOC folks in the lifetime in quarantine, just email me at sabia@theblackdoula.com. And on that note, we are done. And I'm just so grateful for everyone that showed up today. Thank you, Melania. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Aaliyah. Thank you, David. I'm more than happy to like promote all of your work even more if I can on my platform. Just tell me what I need to do. And we'll also be sending out an email with all your contact information as far as like where people can find you with the replay of this as well. So I'm hoping that that is also helpful to you. And thank you for a great Sunday.
Thank you so much for having me, Sabia, and thank you for my esteemed panelists and Leah for sending out the links and getting all the technical stuff in order. I appreciate it.
If you want to say any thank yous on your way out, feel free. The mic, you just come off mic and do whatever you want to do.
I just want to say thank you, everyone that that joined us today, and excuse me. Thank you, everyone that joined us today and, you know, shared this space with us. It's really appreciated. And thank you, Aaliyah. Thank you so much for inviting me into this space. I really, truly do appreciate it.
Thank you, Melania.
Thank you, everybody. And I so appreciated sharing space with such powerful voices and perspectives. That's part of my self-care too. I'm an extrovert, so I get energy from, and so this has really filled my gas tank, let me say that. And I really relish in the brilliance that's in the room. And even for those who didn't have the opportunity to put their voice in the space, for holding space for us as these most important conversations happen. So thank you, and thank you for Sabia and Aaliyah. And it's amazing.
And if anyone has any questions, like I said, you'll be getting an email within like the next hour or two with the recording, probably within the next hour once Zoom processes this thing. And then after that, like I said, any question you can reply back to that email. David, Melania, and Stephanie, please send me like any payment links that you have, because I'll put that in the email too for anyone wanting to send you some funds today. And Leah will get that from you. And thank you all. Have a good one.